My name is Steve Peters. I'm probably the only one on the panel that doesn't make a living selling seed because I'm happen to be part of the Organic Seed Alliance nonprofit money train. So I get to pontificate. I actually do have a little seed consulting business called Seed Revolution Now. On my blog, I do sell a few varieties of seed that I grow or some of my friends grow, varieties that I absolutely love and love to promote. So I'm really with the idea of trying to get these varieties out into the market in a larger scale. Look at these happy faces out here. Man, they're just making all kinds of money selling seed. Okay, I'm going to kind of give you sort of a general overview of the things that you really have to consider in trying to make seed profitable, seed selling. And some of these things have been covered already by the panel, and then some of the things I'll be covering that haven't been dealt with yet. But first of all is really about identifying your goals, and I think this audience is mostly focused on selling production seed, so I'm not really going to say much about stock seed, which is the other channel that's for seed growers. Okay. And just a word about stock seed. It's kind of a very highly specialized segment of the seed growing business, requiring more expertise, greater isolation, and it's really a high dollar value, low volume situation. But if you can become a good stock seed grower, this is really can be a nice little source of income. But you, of course, have to have the demand in the first place. Okay, so, but really, in starting this, I mean, you really want to start with the crops that are going to work for you. I mean, don't start at a disadvantage, because we need all the advantages we can get here. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, as we all know, all you seed growers know how difficult it is. And so I think we need to think about what crops we're growing. I mean, you know, Sarah loves burdock, but you know, maybe it isn't the one that's going to do it for us and take us to the promised land. But you know, but you do have to have that passion and desire for the crop that you are growing, and then look at it in terms of how it fits with the rest of your farm. Does it integrate well, like with Daniel and his mixed operation there? Is it fitting well with the crop rotation? Is the labor there when you need it? Do you have pollinators around, the right pollinators that are going to pollinate your flowers? So you definitely need to consider all of this. And then, of course, the market demand. I mean, everybody that gets into this loves growing seed, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a way of selling that seed, it can be self-defeating. Although I think when we start out, we start by growing seed for ourselves, and then we work from there. So that's, you know, that is the benefit. At least we have seed for ourselves. I think, and then wherever you can find it, study trial results of different varieties, and to really dial in on the ones that work for you, and also that have important agronomic or horticultural characteristics that then become desirable to your customers. You know, so you really, you know, what is it? What is special about this variety that you're growing, and why do your customers need it? So, and then compared to produce growing, you want to identify the specific tasks that inherent of seed growing. Fertility and water requirements may be the same, but they may be a little bit different. The extended harvest, or delayed and extended harvest, and I think compared to fresh growing, you've got that issue of the crop being in the ground from 1 to several months longer. So I think when you're looking at, when you say, well, how many dollars per unit area am I earning? Well, how many dollars per unit time am I earning? And it's time, the labor and also the amount of time that a crop's taking up space in the field. And then the harvesting process, which is unique to seed growing, and what the most efficient way to do that is. And then all the steps post-harvest: cleaning, drying, storing, bagging, and germ and purity testing, and then finally marketing and distributing. So, you want to do just a cost-benefit analysis compared to your produce growing. And really, sharpen the pencil and try to figure out both unit area costs and also time costs. And then I won't belabor this; these folks have covered it. But basically, making an enterprise budget, writing down your timeline, what your cash flow is throughout the season. I can tell Andrew Still's got it all figured out. He was there, in deep thought, and I think that's what we need to be, is deep thinkers on this, and and just really figure that out. And are we paying ourselves at least a minimum wage? And maybe that won't happen for a few years. Maybe it's just, and it is a labor of love when you start it out, but that really isn't sustainable in the long run. And then identifying who our customer is, and I think the other panel members covered some of that. So you develop. You want to really think about developing a longer-term plan. And what are your goals 5 or 10 years down the line? And I always encourage people to start small. And the next slide here, I'm going to show you a little bit, some numbers. But I think before you start getting all those dollar signs in your head, you got to just take it slow and really figure out what's going to work. And then creating a market for new varieties, because a lot of this, we're really talking about biodiversity. We're talking about selling lots of different products. The conventional market is all about selling large amounts of few products. And we're talking about selling small amounts of lots of products. And that is really the quandary of how to keep biodiversity intact and yet still be profitable with it. So when you create those new niche markets, you may have to do some hustling, like growing the fresh produce crop and taking it to wholesale buyers, getting them to really desire that fresh crop, and then say, well, guess what? There's a demand now. People want this. Farmers want to grow this, and those farmers need the seed to grow that crop. But that takes time and effort. And then finally, just being really adaptable and flexible. You may have to do a 180 in the middle of your brilliant 10-year plan, and because there's always things that come up, and it's a challenge. But okay, this chart, I made this chart based on some estimated yields and revenue from 1,500 square feet. And I like that unit size. It's like basically one 5-foot bed that's 300 feet long. And I like that size because that's a size that we can do pretty much by hand. We can process and clean with buckets and tarps and fans and hand threshing. And so we don't have to really invest a lot in infrastructure at this level. And this gives us, and so I've got these crops arranged. These happen to be the 10 leading vegetable crops in California. And it's probably true in terms of revenue, fresh revenue, with onions being the most profitable. Actually, this is the okay, let me step back. These are the 10 top seed revenue crops. So in other words, onions, and I'll show you this in a minute, is onions is the most, there's the amount of onions required, the amount of seed required is the most, has the most potential revenue of all the crops in California for vegetables. And I've arranged this in terms of the gross wholesale revenues with onions for 1,500 square feet. You can see onions $2,400 using some basic numbers out of Knott's handbook and some basic planting rate numbers and yields. And you can see that, you know, onions, lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, those are the highest value crops, both in terms of gross wholesale revenue. And then if you actually break it down into packs, it changes a little bit. Some of them, the order of things reverse. Lettuce becomes far and away the most profitable packeted item. And so it's nice to kind of run an exercise like this, and you'll see that, you know, the packeted revenue is 3 to 5 or 6 times more than the wholesale revenue. Of course, it comes with a lot of additional costs. And at the bottom end, like peas and beans, you know, are much lower in revenue. And but you'll see here, interestingly enough, that what I did here, okay, let's take onions, for example. So 1,500 square feet yields 15 pounds of onions. Those 15 pounds of onions, and you go into the second column, the estimated acres that can be planted from those 15 pounds, it's 4 acres if you direct seed it, or 8 acres if you transplant the onion seed. Does everyone follow me on this? So with just 1,500 square feet, we could potentially plant 8 acres of onions. I mean, that's quite a bit of onions. So I think in some of these crops, even with small areas like 1,500 square feet, we could really make a dent in the local market. I mean, if we're talking about selling out and selling across the U.S. or abroad, then, you know, obviously the market is much bigger. But it does show that even in small areas, you can produce quite a bit of seed. And remember that we're only talking about one onion variety here. And in fact, I mean, onions, there's dozens of varieties that people plant. So, you know, if there's 30 different onion varieties that are planted in a local area, that amount of seed, I mean, we're talking about, you know, 200, 300 acres of onions being planted. So, yeah, I'm going to move along here. So anyway, what I did was with these next 2 charts is look at like what the seed demand potentially could be in California, and then the next one's going to be, I combine Washington and Oregon. And you can look at this for wherever region you're at and find the you know, get these statistics. You know, and what I did was I figured out this is 5% of the acreage of all of California. So if we were able to capture in this alternative market with biodiverse crops, if we were able to capture 5% of the produce growers market, that would be 11,000 pounds of carrots that need to be grown. So my point is here, there's a massive demand out there. I mean, most of this, of course, is done with conventional seed, hybrid seed, but there's a real opportunity for us to take advantage of the fact that there is a massive market out there. Here's the top crops in the Pacific Northwest. And like green peas is by far and away the most important of all the vegetable seed crops. And it's not even in the top 10 in California. So it's a big one in the Northwest. Onions and sweet corn, both are about, Washington and Oregon equal California in terms of their demand. And by the way, I will make these charts available so you don't have to, you know, scurry and write all this down. And then snap beans is a big one in the Northwest here too. In fact, it's twice as large as California's demand. Of course, you want to scale appropriately, and sometimes you have to kind of cover all scales, from hand threshing to maybe using belt threshers to using combines, for an example, because you have different scales that you might have on your farm, and some of it may be for stock seed, some of it's for production seed. And then, of course, you want to make sure, you want to, prove to your customers that you're a hard-working farmer. And, Nash, he's growing farmers up at his farm, and so he's got a good young crew that's doing his work. And no, I'm kidding. Nash has earned his living, believe me. But I think the important thing here is you've got to manage your reputation consistently, because if you blow it, if you cut corners, you can pretty much say, kiss your customer goodbye. They will not come back to you. So you've really got to be, be on your A game at all times. And then what are you known for? What do people know you for? So, and then if you are getting into a scale where you need seed contracts, look at the contract, get your prices clear with the customer. What about contingencies? What if you overproduce, or if you have a crop loss? What are the contingencies in there? And then what are the things that the company will support you with? Are they going to provide you with the stock seed? Are they going to help you rogue or do selections? So really, when you do contracts, really read the fine print and make sure that you're all on the same page. How much time do we have? Okay, I'm not going to. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to blast through these because, but I think we also need to look at, besides individual farms, like our own seed racks and our own bulk business, there are alternatives. I work with a seed cooperative, the Family Farmer Seed Cooperative, which is another model to pool your resources to basically increase your market. This is a map of the members. There's roughly a dozen members spread throughout the West. I'm not going to really go through all this, but basically, what I want to show you is, and then we've received some in-kind support through the years. But I think I want to just list some of the challenges when you're having a group that's working together. We had limited cash flow, and so there's an inconsistent effort amongst the members. And the fact that we're so widely spread, it's very difficult for communication other than electronically or on the phone. And so there's a lot of challenges. So I've now kind of taken more interest in bringing that together into bioregional seed hubs. I'm working with a group in Montana, the Triple Divide Seed Co-op, who have more of it. They're still spread out, but they're at least within one state, and you can come together and meet. And so I think it's a good model as we go forward, because we need to pool our resources. This is just a map of some of the different bioregional hubs in California. And then I just want to close with kind of what I call my guiding principles when we're thinking about how we can make a living doing this. It's, a lifetime journey, always learning. I mean, I always feel like a novice in this thing. And as I said, being adaptable, invest financially only in as much as you can afford to lose, because you will lose the whole thing of a crop. I guarantee it. And so you just have to be prepared for that. Invest personally in as much as you can possibly give. I think that's also important. And then remember that well-maintained seed, if you do it right, only increases in value over time. Keeping good records, that's the mundane lesson here, but it's really important. And then finally, just really be passionate, and when you're doing this, embrace it completely. So thank you.